Right, now, this guy that we're going to hear from, I had a great chat with him, as I do with many of you that upload all your things to me, all your writings, your poetry, your spoken word. Now, this is a Staffordshire writer who kind of creates and crafts funny characters, and well, his own story goes from Stoke to Sicily and back again. He's already had 2 books published this year, and Barry Lilly's one of the biggest champions of women's literature, putting kind of the female characters right at the centre of his work. So I think the way I can describe it to you, I mean, I love a bit of, I suppose it's almost, if you think of like cozy drama, Marlowe Murder Club, but you've got some really strong female characters in there. Very funny, but it's all centred around the complexity of the females and what they do and how they react. I could go on for this for ages, couldn't I? I could completely go off on one, but he's been telling me why, and how just over a year from his first book coming out, he loves bringing the humour into his life lit, all made right here in the West Midlands, well, apart from the bits that he writes when he's in Sicily. This is Barry.
I started writing very young, really, because I've always worked in theatre. I started to write plays. That then moved from working in theatre when I did my theatre degree put down in London, and I got really disillusioned, so I set up my own company and worked in arts education. But I continued to write and develop scripts for other theatre companies, and then decided, I don't really like doing this, because actors are very strange people. They're too demanding, and also they never actually read the lines out how I imagine them in my head. So I worked freelance, and I worked for a couple of magazines, and then I worked for an Italian magazine based in Sicily, and that's what I originally was planning on doing, and began writing fiction as something to do as an experiment. People seem to like it, but because of my background in theatre, all of my work is dialogue driven. My first book was a novella which was full of bad language, and it was a children's story, not for children. But I was writing a set of monologues for a play that I wanted to develop, and decided to turn that into a book, and that became 52 Weeks, which was selected for the Arnold Bennett Literature Prize this year. It was very interesting because the character wasn't really developed, and then when my mum had breast cancer, that was the character, and everyone said, "You can't write a comedy about people with cancer," and I said, "You watch me, I can."
Sitting in a nearby coffee shop, Vera's treat, she mumbles through a mouthful of currants and flaky pastry. "I think I tried on nearly every dress in that shop, and they were all too tight. Must be the way they're cut," I tell her. "Anyway, how's the diet going?" "It's not," as a currant escapes its pastry confines and lands on the table. "I've counted my points every day, and I still don't lose any weight. I think it's water retention."
I wrote this whole book, 52 chapters, because she has a 52-week prognosis, and people just loved it because it's funny and it's uplifting, and it looks at living with breast cancer in a completely new way.
More like pastry retention. Vera laughs and spots the currant on the table. "I wonder how many points there are in a stray currant," she says as she pops it into her mouth. "They're only fruit after all, and fruit is point-free."
I think it's 3 years on now, and it still sells. Every day it still sells, and I get lots and lots of feedback from ladies and a lot of young women who say, "I was absolutely terrified when I had my diagnosis, and I read this and realised that it doesn't define me. Life just carries on, and you just deal with it." Another book came, and another, and I continued writing ever since.
You like writing from a woman's perspective, and why is that? Why is that important to you?
Because women are infinitely more interesting than men.
Well,
They are, because women tend to be multifaceted. Men can be very flat, very 2D, whereas women are more 3D characters. They have have more about them. Women's relationships with other women are, in my opinion, much stronger and much more believable than male friendships. And also, I just grew up around really strong women. When I started to write, somebody pointed out that all of your protagonists are women. Why? And I said, I don't know. That's just the way my brain works. And when I moved on to my Italian series of books, again, it was the first book was a woman who was the lead character through it, and then second, third and fourth are all women. And also women can have funnier lines than men.
Not when it's dried and covered with all butter pastry, it isn't. Vera stands up and brushes herself down, the pastry flakes giving the impression her cardigan is suffering from a chronic attack of psoriasis.
There is so much that happens to women that men have no idea about. Women are the glue, I think, that holds most of our society together. But sadly, the people in power don't know this. They still think it's men that wear bow ties.
I mean, that's really interesting what you say about, about what you feel about writing for women and them being multifaceted. Because if you are led by dialogue, I can see where you're coming from. I mean, your Italian series, tell me about that. What was that sort of based on?
It started because somebody said to me, why does every character have something dark about them? You've got a widow, you've got somebody with cancer, you've got somebody who's gone through the care system. And I said, I really don't know. That's just the way that I look at it, but I just like to take a dark theme and show that good can come from it. The Italian story was the Medici legend about the Medici diamond, and I wanted to write a comedy about it, and it never came. I just kept trying and trying and trying. And so in the end, I killed off Rachel's husband because it was so much easier to kill him and make her a widow, and she inherits a hotel. And the whole thing sort of followed from there, with underscored with somebody who was looking for the diamond, because in the first book the diamond is at the hotel. So you got a little bit of intrigue, but then it developed from a linear story of a woman and her best friend Louise, and how this hotel was taken from rubble to, restored. And it turned into what people say is a romance. I fought against that. I don't write romance now. It's not me. I don't do that. People loved it. So then I had to write a second one. They have a romance theme, but they have a darker theme running through them. November is book 4A because there was a mini book in the middle, but that comes out in November. And again, that's a dark theme. That's about an Albanian girl who's hiding in America. A guy from a gang is looking for her. They're people traffickers. The underlying story there is that there's a writing group, and she is hidden in this writing group, and then she falls in love with this really obnoxious English author. This year I released a second series, so book one of that just gone out this month. That's based in Abruzzo in Italy. There's no dark theme in that. That's literally three sisters.
The room had a small window, and she walked over and looked out at the garden. Piero was locking up the brick outhouse at the edge of the vegetable patch. He looked up and, seeing her, waved. "I think I'm going to like you," she said to herself, and returned his gesture. Taking a deep breath, she unbuttoned the top two buttons of her blouse and lay down on the bed, which yielded with a squeak. She looked up at the ceiling. She began the breathing exercises her therapist had advised she do for relaxation. The ringing telephone shattered her moment of peace. She looked at the screen, and seeing Jeremy's name, she groaned.
One falls in love, one decides that she's in a marriage she doesn't like because she's a lesbian, and the other one is the youngest one who's got no direction. And that shows how generations can be very different, and sisters can be very different, but in the long term they're all the same.
I thought he was absolutely great. That's Barry Lilly. Look him up because he's done loads of writing. I love the fact that he always uses some really strong female characters. If I just sort of say the quote when he uploaded to me here, "I'm a man who unashamedly writes women's literature because I think women make more interesting characters." They're much more honest in their critiques of the books they read. If they like you, they like you. If they don't, they have no qualms in applying for a literary divorce. There you go. So yeah, if you like that kind of vibe of like friendship, complicated characters. The Vodka and Cranberry Club, what a name for a book. Do look him up and find out more about him. Also, his details were passed on by Jan Edwards, who is someone else that we've had on the show. So also from the same writing group. So if you're in a writing group, do let us know what you're doing. I'd love to hear from you.